Hi, everybody, and welcome to Anchored in Hope. I'm Lisa Toney, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. And our guest is Dana Byers. She's an executive pastor at Mercy Road in Indiana, and I'm so thrilled that she could join us today. Thanks for joining us, Dana.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. I'm glad to be here.
Yay, good. Well, I'm excited to jump in and have Dana share a story with us. But before we do that, I always ask our guests what superpower they would have if they would have one. So, Dana, what would it be?
I think I would want to be able to transport myself somewhere because I really do not like to drive. I don't know if it's like attention deficit, if it's stress, if it's lack of focus, if I'm thinking about too many things, I don't know. But I really feel like driving is the biggest waste of time. And it's expensive too. Wouldn't it just be great to be able to appear where you need to be?
That's right. Think about it, and you're there.
Yes.
Yeah, that would save me a lot of time too. So I feel you in that one for sure. All right. Well, Dana, I know you've done a lot of traveling in your life, and your family's had lots of adventures. And so you want to take us to a time in your life where God was working in kind of a unique way in your life. So kind of set the stage for us. Where were you at with your family at that time?
Yeah, it was probably, I think it was 2009 in the fall. And our family was living in Krakow, Poland, and we were missionaries. We had been living primarily in London the 2 years prior, but we had traveled a lot. And I'm more of a kind of structured, I like to have a plan and take little breaks in between kind of person. And like most people, I marry someone who's very different than me.
Of course.
He loves to go, go, go. You know, like for trips that we plan, he would just like, I think, to land and have no plans and adventure and get lost on purpose. So I'm trying to become more spontaneous. He and I have been together about 20 years, but I'm just not there. You know, he was like born that way. So I give you all that information to say that the few weeks prior to our move to Krakow, we had been in a number of countries for 6 months. So we'd been on the road. It was like washing underclothes for the kids and all of us in the hotel bathroom and like hanging it to dry every day and trying to find laundromats and mostly in places. Yeah, I mean, it was mostly in places where people don't speak English. And my daughter at that time, my youngest was 3. And my oldest had just turned 7. So it was just, you know, a lot of transition. We had a lot of fun. I wouldn't change it. I loved the experience. But when we got to...
Were you doing all that traveling as mission work, or were you guys just kind of on a little adventure before you hit Poland? Or
as mission work, we were helping connect churches to launch online churches in non-English speaking countries. So we were kind of a little bit like the engine behind the scenes, but we were trying to help them minister online in a way that was, you know, contextually appropriate for their culture and their language and the way things were spiritually at that time in their city or in their country. But whenever we landed in Poland, it was to launch the first online church outside of America. So we had worked in a variety of partnerships, but this was going to be like a first kind of big one. So we said, we'll stay here. Like, I think we were there maybe 4 months. Well, it was a wonderful experience. And I look back on it just with such joy, not only because I love the city and the people, it was just a really sweet time in our life. But what happened is, you know, it was like, go, 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 stop. And we went from hotel living to having this little apartment. And I needed to homeschool our kids because, you know, they couldn't speak Polish to attend a local school, and all these things suddenly needed to happen. And I just realized I went from, you know, kind of like 60 miles per hour down to maybe 5 miles per hour, and my body just wasn't adjusting well. I think my mind adjusted quickly, like, okay, here's what I'm doing. But my heart and my body just were struggling to connect with the plan. And I ended up
came to a screeching halt after that fast pace and had to reacclimate.
Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, I need to have a pantry of a handful of basic items to cook meals. And by the way, in our apartment, we had a camping stove with one burner that worked. Okay. I mean, it was really funny. Now, it was a sweet little apartment, but it was just, you know, our things were kind of randomly thrown together. Everything we owned was just in a few pieces of luggage. So we needed to figure out how to make laundry happen, all that stuff. But once all that was sorted, we really didn't have much community. And I wasn't able to sleep. It was the strangest thing. Like I would lay down to sleep, and it wasn't just my mind was racing. It was like physically, I could hardly even keep my eyes closed. And I learned as time went on that a lot of leaders, we struggle with adrenal fatigue, where even when we try to slow down, we're not able to because we've had such high cortisol. We've functioned in such a way that we don't slow down and rest for a long period of time, and our body doesn't know how to handle rest.
So it's actually a physiological condition that a lot of leaders experience, that we just are so go, 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 go all the time that we've almost conditioned our body to expect that. And so when we try and tell our body to rest, our body just rebels, says, I don't know how to do that.
It was like I was a toddler all over again. My body was. It was like, nope, I don't want to nap. I don't want to sleep. I need to be awake. And then I started experiencing, it wasn't panic, but it was just almost this, I couldn't relax sense of expecting problems to come up when it should have been just a really calm season for us. I started, for being a pretty optimistic person, I started anticipating things more negatively, and it started moving towards just really into my thought life as well, which part of that's just because I wasn't sleeping much. And I don't know about you, but if I don't sleep, Lisa, it's a problem.
Oh, I hear ya. I am the same way. I'm like, I can get a lot done, but I need my sleep.
Absolutely. And I was trying this homeschool thing with the kids, and no two kids are the same. My kids are very different as well. And I will never forget, it was a Friday. We had started on Monday trying to homeschool, and by Friday both of their sweet little faces are looking at me across the dining room table, and they were like, Mom, we don't want to do this. Can we do something else? And I went, oh my gosh, they actually agree on this. I didn't feel I was specifically gifted to homeschool them, but I didn't see any other options. And again, I think my mindset with this adrenal fatigue just started thinking, we're a little bit trapped. There's nothing else we can do. Well, I now remember with a sense of humor when everything kind of started like falling apart. And outside our bedroom window in the apartment, there was this big billboard, and it said something in Polish. I had no idea what it said, but it had a can of motor oil on it. I just remember my husband doing one of those like, are you okay? You know how a husband can come to you and be like, you sure you're okay, babe? It was one of those moments. And I'm staring out our bedroom window in the apartment, and I said, I just wish I knew what that billboard said. And I just started sobbing, and it was like all the emotion came out. Looking back, it's hilarious because, when you travel, you're just like, I don't really care what that says. I'll figure out my way. I had looked at that for so many days. I just thought, I'm so lost here. I don't know what to do.
And that billboard kind of was symbolic of all of that. It all kind of came to center on that point.
There was very deep meaning in that moment. And we certainly didn't laugh about it then because I was sobbing. But we do now, because once I was able to communicate that I just felt so lost, even though we were sure we were where God wanted us. That project was actually working out awesome with the online church in Poland. We just didn't feel connected after all this kind of flying around and going from place to place. And so spiritually, I just started asking God, God, you're creative. Would you help me come up with solutions? And the handful of people we knew that spoke English, we started sharing with them, hey, here's kind of how I'm feeling. Do you have any suggestions? And by God's grace, we connected with we found out about a preschool that had a couple teachers who spoke English, and it was very minimally priced. We were able to afford it. And so my kids got to go to school every day and learn a couple words and phrases in Polish and eat Polish food and play with other kids and have a blast. And
oh my goodness, what an answer to prayer. Were you just like, did you feel like God specifically had answered your prayer in that moment?
Oh, I knew that he did, because we had said to the kids, if we find an opportunity, we will definitely do it if we can afford it. And God just checked all those boxes. Another thing, Lisa, was I was feeling like I don't need to just sit at home alone during the day. Now that the kids have a place, God has a plan for me to go somewhere. And our apartment was actually in a building that had an English school for local business professionals to come learn English. And I was invited to come volunteer there. And so my husband would work in the coffee shop there, and I got to volunteer in the ESL classes. And it was just so sweet to be among people again and start feeling myself. It was like I was thawing out. I can't think of a better way to explain it. was really wild.
Were you able to start sleeping at that point? Did that did that return?
Not only was I able to start sleeping, I would start using that time where, like an hour before I had to go pick up the kids, I would just kind of lay down and deep breathe and lay on the couch and just set my phone timer for maybe 20 minutes and just have a little nap. And then I would go pick up the kids and come back and we'd make dinner. And it was, it turned something where I felt despair into really rejuvenation, because God knew that just a few months later, he was going to lead us back to move back to America. It was a really busy season for us. And my husband started a wonderful but demanding new job. And we didn't know any of that was coming so quickly around the corner. So I'm thankful that he really took the reins and just gave me a kind of a fresh perspective on something that I really thought was going to kind of take me out on some level.
Right. And did your kids and your husband notice the difference in you as well?
I know my husband did. My kids were so little, I don't think they said anything, except they probably knew that, oh, mom is playing with us more, mom's cooking more, reading books, doing all these things. And they got to see me go out and do things for myself. It's funny because as I think about that season, whenever we have such a limited amount of energy, we tend, I think anyone does, but I know especially as a woman, I do, we tend to think, what are the things I can stop doing? I remember thinking, oh, I haven't been exercising. I haven't gotten my hair cut for a while. And as I was sort of coming up for air, I took an afternoon and went and got my hair cut. And it was just a hair trim, but it was like magical, just like, oh, I just did something for myself. And that turned into, my husband noticed a gym within walking distance from our apartment that was also very inexpensive to take part in, and I could just pay a couple dollars and go get in a workout. And so I would go work out there, hear hear music, have fun, and then I would walk home. It was really brisk. It was pretty cold in the fall in Krakow, but I loved it because I would have this run or something on the treadmill, and I would be so hot, and I would just walk home in that cool, fresh air, and it was literally like fresh air in my life. And it was God saying, you're taking care of yourself. I'm preparing you for what the next season is. And he really, I think, wanted to encourage me that. And I was in a situation where it felt like he was all I had. So often I've got, a girlfriend I can call or call someone else and check in, or even coworkers. And I really felt we had very limited resources in every way during that season. And he really turned it into a sweet time when I thought it was going to be pretty devastating.
Right. Well, I love that you shared this story, Dana, because I feel like, especially for people who move, regardless of what season of life you're in, moving can be really hard because you really do isolate yourself for a while, and it takes time to get acclimated. It takes time to get to meet people. And I feel like I talk to a lot of people, and I've experienced that myself when we've moved, that, you kind of do go through that season of depression, and even though you're excited and you might know that God had moved you there specifically, but just that season of newness can be really challenging for people to navigate. So, and I love that you talk about it in terms of you kind of recognize that you weren't yourself, and that you found ways to kind of push beyond that rather than just keep sitting in isolation. So I wonder, if you could say some words of encouragement to anyone who's maybe in a season of preparing to move or has just moved and is feeling kind of that, what would be your encouragement to them?
I think my encouragement would be two things. One would be the more spiritual encouragement, which is that God doesn't send you anywhere that he's not already present, and that his plans for you are more than you could ask, think, or imagine. He's going to help you put roots down there, even if it's for a temporary time, even if it's temporary. He will bless you with relationships that will impact you for your entire life. I still remember a really sweet Sunday morning lunch that we had after church with neighbors who were missionaries from Canada, and just enjoying that time with them. It was like, a drink of cold water on a hot day, because I just hadn't had that community. And when you see it, you recognize clearly it's God at work helping you adjust to that new environment. He will do that for you. And it's really one day at a time. So that's the more spiritual advice. The more practical advice would be something like, it doesn't matter where your spatula is. And that, that sounds really silly, but I moved so much, and I remember thinking, I just want to cook a meal, then I'll feel like I'm at home. But I can't find the spatula, or I can't find the wooden spoon, or I can't find the things I used to use every day at my previous home. Then I realized it doesn't matter. Like those things, it always feels like it's a big dramatic problem. I can't find something, or where are my running shoes, things like that. And God is our home. Anywhere I go, I'm really affected by environment, and he's always reminding me, I'm your spiritual home. You might love the office you're in right now, or you might love the car that you have, or you might love the home that you're in, but none of those things are really where you belong. If you don't have all that you need, you actually do. It might feel like I don't, but it's okay. You can get by and not feel like you have to adjust too quickly. I think we tend to push ourselves like, oh, I should be adjusted by now. I should know where my spatula is by now. I should be doing all these things. And really the fact is, God's expectations are just that we obey and that we seek him, not that we have everything sorted out, within the first week. His plan is not for us to rush ourselves. And that doesn't come from him when we feel that way.
That's so good. I think that's your next book, Dana. It doesn't matter where your spatula is. It's a good one. But it's such good practical advice. And I love talking about how, Jesus is our home. And when we as women of faith believe that we can anchor our soul, anchor our hope in Jesus, that really does mean that that's home for us. And I love, that means the body of believers is throughout the world. And so we can connect into the body of believers and find that connection and find that hope of knowing that we are not alone, that we worship, one God in many locations. And that is a sense that can give us a real sense of, I think, security and peace and hope that we can transition into a new season of life, So I love that you mentioned those things, because I think it's easy for us to let Satan whisper in our head that it's unfamiliar, we don't know things, we're not going to fit in, we're not going to learn, and rather than lean into the truth of who Jesus called us to be in that season and in that place. So I feel like those are really helpful and wise words from the voice of experience of one who has traveled much. Well, Dana, what do you feel like God taught you most during that season? How would you describe maybe who Jesus was to you during that time?
I think he gave me a greater understanding of his authority all the time that we were overseas those years, because the piece of being in places where we weren't safe, or being in places where we didn't know many people, couldn't speak the language, you name it, I just was able to rest more and more over time in the fact that he is omnipresent, that nothing surprises him. He knew we would be where we would be on a given night, even if there was something violent going on in that neighborhood or something nearby, and that it didn't diminish or take away from that calling he had still put on us. And it just, being back in America now at a church, it can feel so safe and comfortable a lot of times, but I'm thankful for that experience overseas, because it reminded me that God was just as present there with us as he is here. And it's just as much a calling in the local church in America as it is when you're overseas, and how important it is to recognize that there's always spiritual danger, but God is always on his throne, and he is always aware of that and mindful of that. And it just gives us the freedom to obey and to serve wherever he has us, instead of trying to contextualize, oh, this is more spiritual, or, oh, maybe this is more difficult to do. And none of that's actually true or biblical. It's just obeying him as he's called us and trusting him moment by moment. I've had a number of people tell me since then, wow, I can't believe you had your kids with you when you did all those things. And I'm so thankful it turned out that way. We don't want to be foolish, certainly, but I'm confident that that's what God had us do, and that it shaped them for their future, whatever God's going to do in my kids' lives. And the ability to trust him as God and King, as someone who is in control and I'm not, was just a huge lesson during that season that I'm still learning, Lisa. I'm not saying it's learned, but he was so apparent and real to me in that way, that for a type A person, it just really opened me up to try to be more open-handed with his plan.
I love that. And I love that you were able to model that for your kids too. I think sometimes we make decisions so often about what we think is the safest thing for our kids rather than lean into God's obeying God and no matter what. And I think that's an even stronger, more positive, amazing model for our kids to be able to see their moms leaning into obedience to God. So thank you for modeling that and showing that. And I'm so glad you could share some of your story with us today, Dana. Thank you for doing that.
Inviting me. I appreciate the invitation.
Yay. Well, we look forward to seeing what God continues to do with you, whether in the States or around the world, Dana.
Sounds good.
Well, I'm Lisa Toney, and I'm here with Dana Byers, and together we want to encourage you to anchor your soul in hope and to anchor your life in Jesus.